The slap seared my cheeks so hard my vision went dark for a second. I stood in the middle of City Hall atrium in a white dress that had taken 6 months to tailor, unable to believe what was happening. Behind the glass doors, guests were waiting, soft music was playing, and in front of me stood Valeria, my future mother-in-law, her face twisted with malice. "I'm telling you one last time," she hissed, gripping my elbow tightly. "Either you sign the condo over to Jaren and pay for this entire wedding, or there will be no wedding. I'll tell my son everything about you. Do you think he won't believe his own mother?" 10 minutes remained until the ceremony. 10 minutes until the moment I had dreamed of for 3 years. 10 minutes until I finally became Cassian's wife. And here was this woman whom I had tried so hard to love, demanding the impossible. "Valeria," my voice trembled, but I tried to keep it steady. "That apartment is the only thing I have left for my mama. I can't give it away. And Cassian and I are paying for the wedding together. You know that." "Oh, you can't." She raised her voice, and several people near the entrance turned to look. "You raggedy gutter trash! Do you think I'd let my son marry the likes of you?" And that was when she reared back and slapped me right there in the lobby in front of witnesses. I stumbled back, clutching my cheek. Tears sprang to my eyes instantly, not from the pain, but from the humiliation. In that same second, the doors burst open and Cassian flew into the lobby. My Cassian, tall, broad-shouldered, in the new suit we had picked out together on Michigan Avenue. He saw my face. He saw my hand on my cheek. He saw his mother frozen with her hand still raised. "What are you doing?" I had never heard him scream like that. He grabbed his mother by the wrist, and she suddenly started shrieking like a banshee. "She's hunting us! She's hunting our family! Cassian's son, she doesn't love you. She just wants your apartment, the residency." Cassian looked at his mother as if he was seeing her for the first time in his life, and then he did something I completely didn't expect. He shoved her. Not hard, but enough that she lost her balance and fell onto a bench against the wall. "You raised a hand to your mother?" Valeria wailed. People were gathering around. The security guard was walking toward us briskly. The clerk peeked out from the ceremony room. Guests were crowding at the doors, confused about the commotion. "Inara," Cassian turned to me, and I saw his hands shaking. "What did she want from you?" I couldn't speak. I just stood there crying, smudging my carefully applied mascara. "She demanded that I sign the apartment over to Jaren and pay for the whole wedding," she said. "Otherwise, there wouldn't be a wedding." Cassian turned slowly to his mother. She had already gotten up from the bench and was brushing off her dress, an expensive burgundy number bought specifically for her son's wedding. "Is that true?" he asked quietly. "Cassie, baby, you don't understand," she cooed, instantly changing her tone. "Jaren has nowhere to live. He's cramped in that rental room with Monet, and this one has 2 whole bedrooms. Why does she need so much space for herself? She's not alone. She's with me. But we can work this out. Think about it. An apartment. Jaren is your brother, your own blood. And this," Cassian enunciated clearly, "is my wife. In 10 minutes, she will be my wife, and if you, Mama, cannot accept that, you can leave." Valeria gasped with indignation. Her face broke out in red blotches. "You're kicking out your own mother for this?" The security guard had reached us, followed by a flustered clerk. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, looking at my tear-stained face. "Should we reschedule the registration?" "No," Cassian said firmly. "We're ready, and this woman is leaving." He took my hand and led me toward the ceremony hall. I walked as if in a fog, not feeling my legs. Behind us, Valeria's screeching echoed as the guard escorted her out. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. Cassian, think about what you're doing. Cassian!" We signed the papers, put our signatures in the registry book, and exchanged rings. The clerk spoke solemn words, but I heard nothing. My ears were still ringing with my mother-in-law's voice, calling me gutter trash. When we walked out of the hall, there was almost no guests left. Only my best friend Solana stood by the entrance, pale, clutching her bouquet. Inara, what happened? It was chaos out here. Later, Cassian said. We'll explain everything later. Solana, tell the guests. The reception is canceled. Apologize for us. How? You guys prepared for so long. Canceled, Cassian repeated, and led me to the exit. We walked down the street, me in a white dress, him in a suit, past pedestrians who turned and smiled, thinking they were seeing happy newlyweds. But I didn't feel happy. I felt crushed. Cassian hailed a cab and we went home to my apartment, the very one my mother-in-law wanted to steal. In the car, we were silent. I looked out the window at the city, at the familiar streets, at the bridge over the river, the high-rises, and thought about how it had come to this. 3 years ago, when I met Cassian, it seemed like life was finally turning its face toward me. Before that, it had mostly shown me its back, hard, unapproachable, cold. My mama died when I was 19. The cancer was found too late, stage 4. She faded away in 3 months, and I was left alone in a 2-bedroom apartment on Grand Boulevard with grief that wouldn't fit inside me and a loan for mama's treatment that needed to be paid off. I didn't remember my father. He left when I was 4. Grandparents? No one. I was completely alone in this huge city. But I managed. I finished my degree in economics, got a job at a construction firm, first as an assistant accountant, then worked my way up to senior accountant. I paid off the loan, renovated the apartment myself with my own hands at night after work. I learned to live alone and asked no one for help. And then Cassian appeared. We met at a mixer hosted by mutual friends. Solana's husband worked at the same engineering plant as Cassian. He walked up to me at the bar, smiled, and said, "You have sad eyes. Can I try to make you laugh?" And he tried. He told stupid jokes, did magic tricks with napkins, impersonated his foreman. I laughed until my stomach hurt and thought, here he is, a normal human being, not trying to impress, not bragging, just wanting me to feel good. He was a design engineer, serious job, good salary. He lived with his mother, which alerted me a little at first, but he explained that his mother was sick and needed care. I nodded understandingly. I knew what it was like to care for a sick mother. Only later did it turn out that Valeria wasn't suffering from any serious illness, just high blood pressure, like everyone else. She simply didn't want to let go of her oldest son. Her youngest, Jiren, was a slacker. Didn't work anywhere, got by on odd jobs, always begging for money. But Cassian was reliable, hardworking, responsible. You could ride on a man like that. And she rode him hard. The first meeting with his parents was strange. His father, Langston, seemed quiet and beaten down. He sat silently at the table, occasionally nodding to his wife, but Valeria talked incessantly about the school where she had worked as a vice principal for 30 years, about the neighbors, about prices in the stores, about Jiren, who was so talented, just unlucky. She looked at me appraisingly, like merchandise in a store that she wanted to return. "So, you're an accountant?" she asked with an intonation as if I'd said I worked as a janitor. "And who are your parents?" "Mama was a nurse. She died 5 years ago. I don't know my father." "Ah, an orphan." This wasn't said with sympathy, but with satisfaction, as if she had found the flaw she was looking for. "Well, our Cassie has always been soft-hearted," she continued, stroking her son's arm. "In childhood, he dragged every stray cat into the house." I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. Cassian opened his mouth to speak, but I beat him to it. "Cassian doesn't pity me, Valeria. We love each other. Those are different things." She gave me a long look and said nothing more that evening. Then came other meetings, other jabs. "Your dress is a bit simple. Jiren's wife always dresses so elegantly." "You undersalted the soup. Cassian will get an ulcer from food like this." "Do you own your apartment or rent?" When she found out the apartment was mine, in a good neighborhood, and a 2-bedroom at that, something changed. The jabs became less frequent. She even smiled at me sometimes. I, being a fool, rejoiced. I thought she was getting used to me. Now I realize it wasn't affection, it was a plan. A year later, Cassian proposed. We were walking along the riverfront. It was a warm May evening. He suddenly stopped, took my hands, and said, "Inara, I know I'm not the perfect option. My mother is difficult, my salary isn't huge, I don't have my own place, but I love you stronger than I thought I was capable of. Marry me." I agreed without hesitation because for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone. We set the wedding for a year later. I saved, putting away every extra penny. Cassian saved too, although his mother constantly pulled money out of him for car repairs, for a vacation, for a new TV. I didn't need a lavish wedding. I wanted something modest. 30 people, a cozy restaurant, live jazz. But Valeria insisted on a banquet in a large hall, 50 guests, 3 courses, an MC, a live band. "People need to see," she explained. "Neighbors, relatives, acquaintances. It's the only time in a lifetime." I didn't argue. I didn't want to fight with my future mother-in-law over such nonsense. I took on freelance bookkeeping for a few small firms in the evenings and pulled through. And then, a week before the wedding, that conversation happened. Valeria came over to my place, supposedly to discuss the seating chart. Cassian was at work. I poured tea, brought out cookies. She walked around the apartment, touched the wallpaper, looked into the second room. "Nice apartment," she said, looking at the window. "Bright, big. Isn't it a bit much for just you?" "Cassian and I will be living here together," I answered, not understanding where she was going with this. "And later, maybe kids will come along." "Kids?" she scoffed. "Now, Jiren and Monet won't be having kids. They have nowhere to raise kids. A rented studio on the outskirts. Maybe they'll save up for their own place." "Save up?" she spun sharply. "With what income? Jiren can't find work, Monet makes pennies, and here you are, alone, 2 rooms, good neighborhood." I finally understood. "Valeria," I said as gently as I could, "I can't give up the apartment. It's all I have left from Mama. It's her memory." "Who cares about memory?" She raised her voice. "The dead don't care, but the living need to live. Jiren is my son, your future brother-in-law." "I am very sorry, but no." She fell silent, looked at me with a strange, calculating gaze. "Well, all right," she said suddenly, completely calm. "I'll be leaving. We'll discuss the seating later." And she left. I told Cassian that same evening. He frowned. "Mother goes too far sometimes. Don't pay attention to it. I'll talk to her." "Cass, she wants me to give the apartment to Jiren." "You won't give it? Then don't. It's your apartment, your memory of your mother. No one has the right to take it from you." I hugged him and thought everything would be okay. Cassian was on my side. He would protect me. I didn't know that Valeria had no intention of giving up either. The taxi stopped at my building, an old brick structure typical for this part of town. We went up to the 5th floor in silence. Cassian opened the door with his key. I had given it to him 6 months earlier when he started staying over more often. The apartment greeted us with silence. On the kitchen table stood a vase of flowers. I had put them there the morning in anticipation of the celebration. Next to them were 2 boxes of pastries that were supposed to be our first dessert as a family. I sat on a stool and broke down sobbing. Cassian sat next to me, hugging me. He said nothing, just held me while I cried out all the resentment, humiliation, disappointment, and fear. "He didn't know," he said finally. "I swear to you, Inara, I didn't know she was planning that. I would never." "I know," I whispered. "I believe you." "She's not my mother anymore." His voice became hard. "After what she did, that is unforgivable." "Cassian, don't say that. She's still your mama." "A mama doesn't hit her daughter-in-law on her wedding day. A mama doesn't demand you give up someone else's home. A mama doesn't try to destroy her son's happiness." He stood up and walked to the window. "You know, Mother always loved Jiren more than me. I understood that from childhood. Jiren was the golden boy and I was the workhorse. Jiren could do nothing and I had to earn straight A's, help around the house, get a good job. I spent all my time trying to prove to her that I was worth something, too. And today, I realized I won't prove anything anymore. I've had enough." He turned to me. "We'll get through this, Inara, without her, without any of them. We are a family, you and me." I walked over and hugged him. My husband. Officially, legally, my husband, despite everything. That evening, we celebrated the wedding anyway, just the two of us. We ordered sushi from the nearest spot, opened a bottle of champagne I had bought in advance. Cassian put the ring on my finger again at home without witnesses and said, "Now for real, I promise to love you, protect you, and be on your side always." I smiled through tears. I promised too. We didn't know then that the real trials were only just beginning. The first days after the wedding passed in a strange daze. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner. Cassian went to work, came home, we ate together. Everything as usual, and everything completely different. Valeria didn't call me, or Cassian. This was more alarming than any screaming match. She wasn't the kind of person who silently accepted defeat. Solana stopped by on the third day. "How are you guys?" she asked from the doorway. I explained to all the guests that the wedding had to be canceled due to family circumstances. No one is offended. Everyone sends congratulations. "Thanks, Solana. You're a true friend." "Oh, stop it. You better tell me what happened there. People are saying your mother-in-law staged a show for the whole city hall." I told her. Solana listened, eyes wide. "Damn. I thought my mother-in-law was a nightmare, but yours? Yours is boss-level evil." "It's not funny, Solana." "I'm not laughing. It's just, what are you going to do now?" "What can I do? Live my life? Hope she calms down?" "People like that don't calm down." Solana shook her head. "People like that lay low." She turned out to be right. 2 weeks after the wedding, the doorbell rang. I was home alone. Cassian hadn't returned from work yet. I opened it without looking through the peephole and saw Jiren and his wife. Jiren was a younger, washed-out copy of Cassian. Same height, but soft, with a beer belly starting to show. Monet, his wife, was a bleached blonde with a predatory gaze and a loud voice. "Hey," Jiren said, unceremoniously pushing into the hallway. "Can we come in?" "You're already in," I answered coldly. "What do you want?" "Oh, just stopping by." Monet squeezed inside too, looking around. "Nice place, right, Jiren? Spacious." She walked into the living room without taking off her shoes. I noticed she was holding her phone in her hand as if getting ready to record something. "Excuse me," I said, "but I didn't invite you." "Come on, just for a minute." Jiren plopped on the sofa. "Just to talk, family to family." "We are not family." "Sure we are. You married Cassie, so we're kin now, and kin should help each other, right?" Monet, meanwhile, walked around the room, touched the curtains, looked into the closet. "What are you doing?" I snapped. "Just looking. We need an apartment so bad. Mama says you promised to help." "I didn't promise anything, and I'm asking you to leave." "Why leave so fast?" Jiren sprawled on the sofa, crossing his legs. "We're not demanding you move out right the second. We can work something out. You give us the apartment. We give you, well, we'll think of something. Mama says if we solve this nicely, she'll forgive Cassie." I started shaking with anger. "Get out, both of you, now. Hey, easy." Jiren got up from the sofa. "We're having a civilized conversation." "Civilized is when you're invited. You barged in without an invitation. You're walking around my apartment like you own it, and you're demanding the impossible. That's not culture. That's disrespect." "Oh, disrespect," Monet flared up. "Look at you, Miss High and Mighty. You should be glad a family like ours took you in. You think Cassie'll stay with you? Whatever Mama orders, that's how it'll be." "Get out," I threw the door open, "or I'm calling the police." They left, snapping back and threatening. On the way out, Monet managed to film the hallway and kitchen on her phone for memory, as she said. When Cassian returned, I told him everything. He paled. "They've lost their minds. I'll talk to Jiren." "Don't," I begged. "I don't want you fighting with your brother because of me." "It's not because of you. It's because of them. They're behaving like this on their own." He took out his phone and dialed a number. "Jiren, this is Cassian. Listen to me closely. If you or your wife show up at my apartment without an invitation one more time, I will file a police report. Understood?" "I can't hear you." "Understood." I didn't hear what Jiren answered, but by Cassian's face, I knew the conversation was ugly. Mother is egging them on, he said, hanging up. Says you promised, that it's fair that you have extra space anyway. It's insane. Cass, she won't stop. Let her try. I won't let her. But Valeria had already tried, and that was just the beginning. A week later, my boss called me. Miss Price, a strict 50-year-old woman I had worked with for 6 years. Inara, come see me. In her office lay a letter, anonymous, printed on a standard sheet. I read it and felt the ground slide under my feet. The letter stated that I was registered at a psychiatric ward, that I had a propensity to embezzlement, and that management should check the accounting records for the last few years. This is a lie, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Absolute lie. Inara, I've known you for 6 years, Miss Price nodded. That's why I didn't run straight to the director, but a copy was sent to his name, too. He demanded an audit. It's my mother-in-law, I slipped out. We had a falling out at the wedding, and now she... Family matters don't concern me, but I have to conduct the audit, you understand? A chief accountant can't work under suspicion. The audit lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I came to work like I was going to an execution, catching colleagues' glances, hearing whispers behind my back. Someone started a rumor I was about to be fired. Naturally, the audit found nothing. My records were spotless. No psychiatric record existed. The director called me in, apologized for the inconvenience, and said the letter would be handed over to the police as a knowingly false report. But the aftertaste remained. Colleagues looked at me differently. Some averted their eyes, others stared with unhealthy curiosity. I came home that evening and told Cassian. My mother-in-law wrote a denunciation on me at work. I almost got fired. Cassian listened and silently walked out of the apartment. He returned 3 hours later with bruised knuckles. I was at my parents', he said. Talked with Mother. Cass, did you hit her? No, he said. I punched the wall. She didn't even deny it. Said she's doing it for my own good, that I'm blinded and don't see the truth, that you bewitched me and dragging me to the grave. He sat on the floor right in the hallway, not taking off his jacket. Cass, I don't understand how she can. She's my mother. She raised me, fed me, clothed me. How can she do this to me? I sat next to him. She's not doing it to you, Cass. To me. No. To us both. She wants to destroy our family. Our family. We sat like that for a long time in the dark hallway, clinging to each other. And I thought, whatever happens next, we are together. We will stand. I didn't know then that the worst was yet to come. A month passed in tense waiting. Valeria went quiet. No calls, no visits, no anonymous letters. I almost believed she had given up. I was wrong. The court summons arrived in a regular white envelope. I opened it mechanically, thinking it was junk mail, and froze. Statement of claim for recovery of funds. Plaintiff, Valeria King. Defendant, me, Inara King. The essence of the suit. Allegedly, my husband, Cassian, had given me $20,000 for apartment renovations before the wedding, and now, due to the dissolution of marriage, the family demanded the return of this money as unjust enrichment. I reread it 3 times. Dissolution of marriage? What dissolution? We were married. We lived together. Cassian came home from work and found me with the paper in my hands. What happened? I silently handed him the summons. He read it, and his face grew darker and darker. She's completely lost her mind, he said finally. What $20,000? What divorce? This is nonsense. Nonsense, I agreed, but I have to appear in court in 3 weeks, and if I don't show up or can't prove it's a lie, we'll prove it. We'll hire a lawyer. Cass, a lawyer costs money. We're already in debt after the canceled banquet. We'll find it. I'll sell the car if I have to. I won't let her bully you. Solana recommended a lawyer. Her cousin worked at a firm on the avenue. Attorney Sterling was a short, stocky man in his 50s with graying temples and a sharp gaze. He listened to our story, studied the summons, and chuckled. Interesting movie. Plaintiff, mother-in-law, demands daughter-in-law return money allegedly given by the son, yet the son, your husband, is on the daughter-in-law side and claims he gave no money. Exactly, Cassian nodded. And your marriage is not dissolved? No, of course not. We are married, living together. Attorney Sterling shook his head. Then the suit has no grounds whatsoever. First, the plaintiff isn't the party that allegedly transferred the money. Second, the marriage isn't dissolved, so we're talking about marital assets, not a debt. Third, there is no proof of money transfer, no receipt, no bank wire. So we'll win? I asked hopefully. You'll win, but she'll fray your nerves. Your mother-in-law evidently isn't a lawyer, but she's a stubborn woman. She'll drag out the process, file motions, demand expertise. You'll have to attend hearings, waste time and energy. How long could this take? A couple of months, if we're lucky. 6 months if she's particularly persistent. We signed a contract with Sterling. We scraped together the retainer with difficulty, had to borrow from Solana. And a week later, something else happened. I got a call from the police. Inara King, you need to come to the precinct to give a statement. A complaint has been filed against you. My legs went weak. What complaint? From whom? From citizen Jiren King. He claims you threatened him with physical harm. Jiren? Jiren wrote a police report on me? For what? For kicking him out of my apartment? I went to the station with Cassian and the lawyer. Sterling warned immediately. Don't sign anything without me. Answer only direct questions. Don't get emotional. The detective, a young guy in uniform, looked at me with poorly hidden skepticism. So, Mr. King claims that during a meeting you threatened him. I'll come back again and I'll kill you. That is a lie, I said. I said nothing of the sort. What did you say? I asked him and his wife to leave my apartment. They entered without invitation, behaved rudely, walked through the rooms, took photos. I said I would call the police if they didn't leave. Are there witnesses? Yes, Sterling intervened. Miss Solana Davis was in the apartment at the time of the visit. She can confirm my client's words. It was true. Solana had stopped by that day, literally 10 minutes before Jiren and Monet showed up. She saw and heard everything. The detective wrote down the statement, took Solana's contact info. We'll check. You're free to go for now. Solana was called in the next day. She confirmed my words. There were no threats, only demands to leave the premises. 2 weeks later, the case was closed for lack of evidence. Jiren received a warning for filing a false report, but I was on edge. Every day I woke up thinking, what else will they invent? Every call from an unknown number made my heart race. Every envelope in the mailbox caused a panic attack. At work, they noticed something was wrong with me. Miss Price called me in. Inara, you look terrible. Pale, circles under your eyes. What's happening? I told her about the lawsuit, the police report, the mother-in-law who had declared war on me. Miss Price listened silently, tapping a pencil at the desk. You know, I had a mother-in-law too. Rest her soul. She died 5 years ago. Well, for the first 10 years of marriage, she tormented me so bad I was ready to divorce 3 times. But my husband was on my side and we stood firm. How did you cope? I didn't. I just lived, worked, raised kids, gave her no fuel, didn't fall for provocations, and at a certain point she got tired, realized I couldn't be broken, and backed off. Mine won't back off. She wants my apartment. Tenure and fracture. Palich yenyen alat. The court hearing for Valeria's lawsuit took place in mid-autumn. The courtroom was small, stuffy, with peeling paint on the ceiling. The judge, a tired woman in her 40s, looked at us over her glasses. Valeria showed up dressed to the nines, expensive dress, hairdo, gold earrings. Next to her sat Monet, evidently the support squad. Attorney Sterling spoke clearly and to the point. He presented the marriage certificate confirming Cassian and I were still married, showed Cassian's bank statements, no transfers of $20,000 in the last 3 years, read Cassian's written affidavit stating he never gave me money for renovations and had no financial claims against me. Valeria tried to object. He gave cash. I saw it myself. It was money I was saving for his wedding. "Do you have proof?" the judge asked. "A receipt? A written testimonial?" "No, but I am his mother. I know what happened." The court cannot base a decision on assertions without evidence. The ruling was issued that same day. Suit dismissed. Court costs awarded to the defendant. When the judge read the decision, I finally exhaled for the first time in 2 months. But Valeria did not exhale. She jumped up from her seat and screamed, "This is unfair! She bribed everyone! The judge is corrupt!" Bailiffs escorted her out of the room. She struggled, screamed, threatened complaints to every agency. Monet scurried behind, filming everything on her phone. "This isn't over," Valeria shouted from the corridor. "I'll appeal." "I'll go to the Supreme Court." Sterling patted me on the shoulder. "Congratulations. Round 1 is yours. Round 2 will be the appeal?" "Maybe, but her chances are even slimmer. Don't worry." I tried not to worry, but when Cassian and I walked out of the courthouse, I saw him looking in the direction his mother had disappeared. "Cass, are you okay?" "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I just saw bailiffs dragging my mother out, heard her screaming at the whole court, accusing the judge of corruption. And I'm thinking, is this really my mother, the woman who read me bedtime stories? People change, or maybe we just don't see who they really are until something serious happens." He took my hand. "Let's go home. I want to forget this day." But we couldn't forget. A week after the trial, Cassian went to his parents' house to pick up his remaining things. He didn't want to leave anything there, didn't want any ties to his past life. He returned late at night, pale as a sheet. "What happened?" I rushed to him. He silently handed me his phone. On the screen were screenshots of a text conversation. While Mother was in the bathroom, I grabbed her phone, wanted to see if she was writing to anyone else about you, and I found this. I started reading, and the hair on my arms stood up. It was a chat with Jiren spanning months. Everything was there. Plans on how to drive the broke heifer out, how to get Cassian back home. "How do we take the apartment for sure? Need to drive her to the asylum," Valeria wrote. "Let Cassie see she's crazy." "Maybe forge documents," Jiren replied. "I have a lawyer friend, says we can backdate a deed of gift." "Good idea. Find out how much it costs." And on, page after page of plans, intrigues, discussions. My name appeared constantly, and every time with hatred, with contempt. "When will she just die?" Jiren wrote in one message. Sick of her, honestly. "Be patient," the mother replied. "Soon Cassie will come to his senses. He's a smart boy. He'll realize Mama was right." I put the phone down. My hands were shaking. "Cass, I know," he sat on the sofa, head in his hands. "I read it all several times. They wanted to forge documents for your apartment. They discussed how to drive you to a nervous breakdown. He fell silent. "She's not my mother," he said finally in a hollow voice. "After this, not a mother. I told her that to her face today." "What did she say?" "Screamed, cried, said I was a traitor, that I traded my own blood for a strange woman. Dad sat in the corner and said nothing, as always. And then she said she curses me, that I'll never have happiness." I sat next to him, hugged him. "You did the right thing." "Yeah, then why does it hurt so bad?" he cried. My strong, reliable Cassian cried into my shoulder, and I cried with him, from relief, from pain, from exhaustion. We gave the screenshots to the lawyer. Sterling studied them and whistled. "This is serious. The plan to forge documents? That's criminal. Conspiracy to commit fraud. We can file charges." "And what will happen?" Cassian asked. "Investigation, possible criminal case. If intent is proven, real time or probation." Cassian looked at me. "You decide. It's your apartment, your life." I thought for a long time. On one hand, they deserved it. They tried to steal my only inheritance, bully me, destroy my family. On the other hand, she was my husband's mother. No matter how much he said she wasn't a mother to him anymore, she still gave birth to him, raised him. "Let's not do it yet," I said finally. "Keep it as an ace up our sleeve. If she continues, then we use it." Sterling nodded. "Sensible, but just in case, I'll archive the materials." Valeria filed the appeal just as she promised. The hearing was set for 2 months later. We waited tensely, anxiously, counting the days. But while we waited, we lived, worked, built our little family. Cassian got a promotion at work. Now he was a lead engineer with a nice salary bump. We finally paid off the debt to Solana, put a little aside for a rainy day. In the evenings, we walked along the riverfront, watched the sunsets, made plans for the future, talked about kids someday when all this was over, talked about travel. Cassian dreamed of seeing the Grand Canyon. I wanted to see New York. You know, he said one day as we sat on a bench by the water, I used to think family meant parents, brothers, blood ties, shared last name. And now I realize that's not it. What is family then? Family is you, the person who is there in a hard moment, who doesn't betray, doesn't abandon, doesn't sell you out for an apartment. He turned to me. Thank you for existing. I smiled. Thank you for choosing me. The night before the appeal, I had a strange dream. Mama, alive, young, how I remembered her in childhood, stood by the window of our apartment, looking at the street. Mama, I called, are you here? She turned and smiled. I am always here, baby girl, in these walls, in these windows, in your heart. I'm scared, Mama. They want the apartment. Your apartment? They won't take it. She shook her head. You are strong, stronger than you think, and you are not alone. I woke up with a face wet with tears, but with a strange sense of peace. The appellate court went quickly. Valeria screamed again accused everyone of a conspiracy against her. The judges listened with stone faces. Ruling, appeal denied, judgment of the lower court upheld. Valeria walked out of the hall silently. No screams, no threats. She looked aged, hunched over, eyes dull. For a second, I felt sorry for her. Just for a second. And then I remembered the screenshots. When will she just die? And the pity vanished. Cassian and I walked outside. It was a clear winter day. Snow crunched under our feet. The sun blinded our eyes. That's it, I said. It's over. I hope so, Cassian answered. I really hope so. But something told me this wasn't the end, and I turned out to be right. A week after the appeal, late at night, our doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Jiren and Monet stood on the landing. Open up, Monet yelled, pounding on the door. We know you're home. Cassian came out into the hallway. What is that noise? Your brother and his wife. He walked to the door but didn't open it. Jiren, what do you need? Come on, Cass, open up. We need to talk, brother to brother. We have nothing to talk about. Leave. Come on, Cass. Mama said you'd forgive us, that we'd settle everything. Mama was wrong. Leave, or I'm calling the police. Silence, then shuffling, whispers, and suddenly, crash. Jiren was kicking the door. Once, twice, third time. The lock groaned but held. I had changed it after the wedding to a reinforced metal one. Cass, call the police. I grabbed my phone, dialed 119. While I explained to the dispatcher what was happening, the crashing continued. Then came a sound that made my heart drop. The crack of wood. Not the door itself, but the frame. Monet squealed with delight. Jiren, almost there! Cassian grabbed a baseball bat he kept in the closet just in case. Inara, go to the bedroom. Lock yourself in. I'm not going anywhere. The door didn't give way. The lock held, but the wooden trim cracked. Jiren's hand pushed through the gap, trying to reach the lock from the inside. And then a voice boomed from the stairwell. Police! Freeze! The squad arrived fast. The precinct was 2 blocks away. Jiren and Monet were handcuffed right there on the landing. She screeched. He cursed. They were hauled off to the station. We were asked to come down to give statements. The door, or rather what was left of the frame, was photographed as evidence. An expert examined the damage. Intentional destruction of property, he stated, plus attempted burglary and home invasion. That's a felony, 2 to 5 years. At the station, it turned out this wasn't a spontaneous outburst. Jiren and Monet had come to move in. In Jiren's bag, they found clothes, toiletries, and copies of some documents. Mama said the apartment is ours now, Jiren mumbled during interrogation, that the court decided Inara has to move out. The detective showed him the court ruling. Here is the ruling. Can you read? Suit dismissed. The apartment belongs to Miss King. No hours. Jiren blinked, not understanding. But Mama said, your mama lied to you and set you up. Now you're facing real time. Monet was released on her own recognizance. She had just stood nearby. Jiren was held for 48 hours. When we returned home to the mangled door and the scattered splinters, I felt something snap inside me. I can't do this anymore, I told Cassian. I can't live like this in fear, waiting for the next hit. He hugged me. I know, I can't either. What do we do? Fight to the end. We write a statement on Mother about those screenshots, about the plan to forge documents. Let her know we have something to answer with. And if she doesn't stop, she goes to court right alongside Jiren. I looked up at him. Are you sure? She's your mother. She is the woman who gave birth to me, he interrupted, and whom I no longer know. The mother I loved died, if she ever existed. The next day, we went to Sterling with the screenshots. We're filing charges, I said, on everyone. Let them answer according to the law. The lawyer nodded. About time. The war was entering its decisive phase, and I wasn't going to retreat anymore. We filed the police report that same day. Sterling helped draft it correctly, citing statutes, attaching all evidence. Conspiracy to commit a crime, he explained, spreading papers on the desk. Felony fraud. Plus, given the texts, we can add extortion. They demanded property transfer under threat of defamation. Is that serious? I asked. Serious enough. If the investigation finds that lawyer friend who promised to forge documents, it'll be conspiracy too. Cassian sat silently, looking out the window. I knew what he was thinking. Cutting ties with a mother is one thing. Sending her to trial is another. Cass, I touched his hand. If you don't want to, I want to, he turned to me. She needs to understand there are boundaries, that you can't just destroy lives, bully people, and think you'll get away with it. The charges were accepted. A week later, Valeria was called in for questioning. I don't know what happened there. We weren't invited. But judging by what Sterling told us later, she didn't last long. When the detective showed her the screenshots, she denied everything at first, then cried, then threatened to complain to the district attorney. It's fake, she screamed. According to the lawyer, they wrote it themselves to frame me. But forensics confirmed the authenticity. The data from the messenger matched. Jiren confirmed the texts were real during his interrogation. He was too scared to lie. The investigation took its course, and simultaneously, the trial for Jiren's attempted break-in proceeded. The hearing was set for late winter. Cassian and I sat in the courtroom, already familiar with the same peeling paint. Jiren looked pitiful, gaunt, unshaven, in a wrinkled sweater. Monet sat in the gallery, pointedly looking away from her husband. The prosecutor read the charges. Intentional destruction of property, attempted home invasion. The public defender mumbled something weak about a family conflict and lack of intent. When Jiren was given the floor, he suddenly turned to us. Cass, his voice trembled. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It was all Mama. She said the apartment was legally ours, that Inara seized it illegally. I believed her. I was a fool. Cassian said nothing. Inara, Jiren looked at me. I know you hate me, and you're right. I did a lot of dirt, but I really didn't mean to. Didn't think it would turn out like this. Defendant, the judge interrupted, do you plead guilty? Jiren lowered his head. Guilty. Sentence, 2 years probation plus restitution for damages, cost of a new door, and court fees. When we walked out of the hall, Monet caught up with us in the corridor. Happy now? She hissed. Got what you wanted? My man is convicted. Your man convicted himself, I answered calmly, when he broke down someone else's door. Screw you! You think this is the end? Valeria herself will soon stand trial for fraud and extortion, so I advise you to stay away from this family before it's too late. Monet opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, then spun around and walked away, her heels clicking. Spring came early that year. By early March, the snow had melted, buds swelled on the trees, the air smelled of thawed earth and hope. The case against Valeria went to court in mid-spring. She was charged with 2 counts, conspiracy to commit a fraud and extortion. That lawyer friend turned out to be a shady notary from the suburbs who agreed to forge documents for cash. He was also charged as an accomplice. I remember the trial against my mother-in-law poorly, like a fog. I remember her face, aged 10 years in those months. I remember how she looked at Cassian with pleading, with hope that he would intervene. He didn't. Defendant King, the judge said. "You are accused of planning to seize your daughter-in-law's property through deceit over a prolonged period. You also exerted psychological pressure on her, demanding the transfer of the apartment under threat of spreading defamatory information. What do you have to say in your defense?" Valeria stood up. She was wearing the same burgundy dress as at our wedding, only now it hung on her like a hanger. "I wanted what was best for my children. Jaren has nowhere to live, and she has 2 whole bedrooms. Is that fair?" "Justice is determined by law, not personal notions," the judge cut her off. "Do you have anything else to add to the charges?" "Cassian," she turned to her son. "Son, tell them I didn't want anything bad. I'm your mother." Cassian stood up. "Your Honor, may I?" The judge nodded. "This woman," Cassian spoke slowly, weighing every word, "is indeed my mother. She gave birth to me, raised me, educated me, and for a long time I thought I owed her everything. But what she did to my wife, the harassment, false reports, attempt to steal her only inheritance, that is not motherly love. That is a crime, and I will not cover for her." He sat down. Valeria stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Cassie!" "Defendant, take your seat," the judge ordered. The verdict was read 3 hours later. Valeria King found guilty on both counts. Sentence: 3 years probation, a fine of $10,000, restraining order, prohibited from approaching the victim closer than 50 yards. When the judge read the sentence, I felt no triumph, no relief, only emptiness. Huge, hollow emptiness. We won, but at what cost? After the trial, life gradually began to settle. Valeria didn't appear anymore, either afraid to violate the order or finally realized she had lost. Jaren, according to rumors, divorced Monet and moved back in with his mother. He still hadn't found a job, got by on odd jobs just like before. And Cassian and I built our life new, clean, without shadows of the past. In the summer, it turned out I was pregnant. I found out by accident, went to the doctor complaining of fatigue and nausea, thought I was overworked, but turned out a new life was growing inside me. When I told Cassian, he didn't believe it at first, then hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. "Really?" he whispered. "Inara, really?" "Really? It's early, 8 weeks, but the doctor says everything looks good." He dropped to his knees, pressed his cheek to my stomach. "Hi, little one," he said softly. "I'm your daddy, and I promise I won't let anyone hurt you, ever." The pregnancy was difficult. After all the stress, my body was glitching. Blood pressure spikes, insomnia. I was hospitalized once for observation. Lying under the IV in the hospital, I thought about Mama, how she carried me alone, without a husband, without support, how she worked until the last day because she needed money, how she gave birth to me in a small hospital on the edge of town and cried with happiness. "Mama," I whispered to the ceiling, "help me. Give me strength to carry this baby. Give me strength to give birth." I don't know if she heard, but I carried her and gave birth to a girl. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, 20 inches, healthy, loud, with dark hair on her head. We named her Nia, in honor of my mama. The first months with the baby blended into one endless day. Feeding, diapers, sleepless nights. Cassian helped as much as he could. Got up for his daughter at night, cooked, cleaned the apartment. "Go sleep," he would say, taking crying Nia from me. "I got this." And he did. My husband, my protector, the father of my child. One evening when Nia was about 6 months old, the doorbell rang. I opened it. On the doorstep stood Langston, my father-in-law. I hadn't seen him since that day at City Hall. He had aged, hunched over, gray hair sticking out in all directions. He crumpled a cap in his hands. "Inara," he said quietly, "can I come in? Talk?" I let him in. I don't know why, maybe because he never did anything bad to me, just stayed silent while his wife wreaked havoc. He sat on the edge of the sofa looking around, saw the crib in the corner, froze. Granddaughter. Yes, Nia. Beautiful name. He paused. "Inara, I came to apologize for everything, for Valeria, for Jaren, for myself." "For yourself? Why?" "Because I was silent. because I allowed her to do it. I knew she was planning, not all the details, but I guessed, and I didn't stop it. You were afraid. Afraid? He chuckled bitterly. I was afraid of her my whole life. She knows how to make life unbearable. When we first got married, I tried to argue, but she threw such tantrums, such scenes. It was easier to agree, easier to be silent. He looked up at me, eyes faded, tired. I left her a month ago, filed for divorce. I didn't know what to say. 40 years together. 40 years I endured. And then I looked at you and Cassian, how you fight, how you don't give up. And I thought, and me? I lived my whole life under a heel, never said no once, never stood up for those she hurt. How much longer? Cassian returned from work with grocery bags, saw his father, froze in the doorway. Dad. Hello, son. They looked at each other, silently, tensely. Then Cassian put the bags on the floor and stepped toward his father. How are you living? Rented a room on MLK Boulevard, working security at the mall. Not much, but enough to live. And mother? Langston had his head. Bad. Took out a loan, wanted to hire an expensive lawyer to appeal the sentence. Didn't work. Now she's in debt up to her eyeballs. Jaren lives with her, but he's useless. Asks for money every other day. I'm sorry, Cassian said, and by his voice, you could hear he truly was. Don't be sorry. She chose this herself, destroyed the family herself. Langston stood up. I just wanted you to know I was always on your side. Just didn't have the courage to say it. And if you ever need help, anything, I'm ready. He hesitated, looking at the crib. And can I see my granddaughter sometime? Not now. When you're ready, if you will be. Cassian and I exchanged glances. You can, I said. Come over. You can always come over. He left, and we sat in the kitchen for a long time, drinking tea and silent. You know, Cassian said finally, I thought I hated him for being silent, for letting her torment all of us. But now I just pity him. He was a hostage to her character his whole life. Now he's free. Yes, now he's free. Langston started coming over every Sunday. He brought toys for Nia. Simple, inexpensive, but chosen with love. Played with her while Cassian and I rested, told her stories, the same ones he used to tell little Cassian. He told us a story I didn't know. Turns out Valeria, many years ago, had swindled an apartment from Langston's first wife. He was married before her, briefly and unhappily. When they divorced, Valeria, young and pushy, helped him sue the ex-wife for the housing. He preferred not to recall the methods used. She was always like that, he said, rocking Nia on his knee. The grip, the pressure, never let hers go. I thought back then, here is a woman, a fighter, strong. And later I realized that strength wasn't for protection, but for attack. She attacked me, the kids, everyone, her whole life. History was repeating itself, only now with a different ending. A year passed. Nia started walking, saying her first words, Mama, Dada. She adored Papa Langston. I went back to work, part-time first and then full-time. Miss Price welcomed me like family. Welcome back, Inara. We missed you. Life fell into a groove. Normal, calm, without drama or shocks. Every day looked like the previous one, and that was happiness. One day, walking with Nia in the park, I saw a familiar figure on a bench, a hushed woman in a worn coat with gray, disheveled hair. Valeria. She didn't see me. She sat staring at one point, her lips moving soundlessly. Next to her lay a bag of bread, feeding pigeons probably. I stopped. My heart started pounding, the old fear ingrained in my bones over those years. But then I looked at her closer and saw neither a monster nor an enemy, just an old, sick, lonely woman. A woman who had lost everything. Husband, oldest son, daughter-in-law, granddaughter, lost by her own fault, her own greed and malice. I didn't feel sorry for her, but the hatred was gone too. Only indifference and the realization that it was all over. I turned the stroller around and walked the other way. Nia babbled something, pointing at the pigeons. I smiled at her. Let's go, baby girl. Let's go home. That evening, when Nia fell asleep, Cassian and I sat on the balcony. Below, the city hummed. Cars, voices, music from open windows. A regular summer evening. "I saw your mother today," I said. Cassian tensed. "Did she do something?" "No, just sat on a bench alone. She didn't notice me." He was silent. "How did she look?" "Bad. Aged, lost weight. Your dad said she's sick, heart. Doctors ordered a checkup, but she refuses." "Why?" "No money. All went to lawyers and fines, and she doesn't believe in free clinics." He turned away to the window. Sometimes I think maybe I should have done it differently. Maybe if I had put her in her place sooner, if I hadn't let her treat you like that." "Cass," I took his hand, "you did everything right. You chose me, chose our family. It's not your fault she couldn't accept that." "I know, but still hard." "I know." We sat silently looking at the city lights, and I thought about how strangely life is arranged. 3 years ago, I was alone, an orphan without kin or tribe, as Valeria used to say, with an apartment from Mama and a fear that no one would ever love me. And now I have a husband who stood by my side against his own mother, a daughter who wakes up with a smile every morning, a father-in-law who comes on Sundays and reads books to his granddaughter, a friend, Solana, who helped in every scrape. Family isn't blood. It isn't a shared last name. It isn't an obligation you can't break. Family are the people who love you, who protect you, who choose you every day, again and again. I forgave Valeria, not for her sake, for mine, so I wouldn't carry that stone in my heart, that weight, that anger. Forgive and let go. But I will never let her into my life again. We lost his family, the one he was born and raised in, but we found ours, the one we built ourselves, brick by brick, through tears and struggle. And this family was worth all the trials. That night, I dreamed of Mama again. She stood by the window, like back then, and smiled. "You made it, baby girl," she said. "I knew you would. Mama, I miss you so much. I am always near, in these walls, in your daughter, in your heart." She walked up to me, hugged me. I felt the warmth, the smell of her perfume I had long forgotten. Live, Inara. Love. Be happy. I woke up with a face wet with tears, but they were good tears. Tears of relief, gratitude, love. The sun was rising outside the window. From the nursery came Nia's voice. She had woken up and was calling for Mama. I got up and went to my daughter. A new day, a new life, new happiness, and no one in the world will ever take it away from me again. The years settled over our lives like a gentle, forgiving snow, smoothing the sharp edges of memory and pain. Nia grew from a babbling toddler into a bright, inquisitive little girl with her grandmother's, my mother's, thoughtful eyes. Our apartment on Grand Boulevard, once a battlefield, transformed into a home filled with the comfortable clutter of family life. Crayon drawings taped to the fridge, a worn patch on the sofa where we'd huddle for movie nights, the scent of Cassian's coffee mingling with Nia's strawberry shampoo. The silence that followed the war with Valeria was not an empty one. It was a fertile quiet, rich with the unspoken understanding that we were safe and we were together. Langston became a constant grounding presence. Every Sunday, like clockwork, he'd arrive with a small gift, a picture book, a bag of oranges, a wind-up toy. He'd sit on the floor with Nia for hours, building elaborate block towers, only to laugh uproariously with her when they inevitably crashed. He and Cassian rebuilt their relationship slowly, cautiously, like men carefully navigating a bridge they feared might still be fragile. They started watching football games together, the old comfortable language of sports, providing a neutral ground where deeper words weren't yet necessary. I'd watch them from the kitchen, Cassian explaining a play to his father, Langston nodding with a soft smile, and my heart would feel so full it ached. This was the healing we'd fought for. I thought of Valeria sometimes, in fleeting, uninvited moments. Hearing a sharp voice in a store or seeing a woman of her age and bearing from a distance would send a cold trickle of old anxiety down my spine. But the feeling would pass, chased away by Nia's laughter or Cassian's hand finding me. We heard snippets about her through the thin, strained grapevine that still connected Cassian to his old neighborhood. She'd moved to a smaller, darker apartment in a less desirable block. Jiren, after another failed scheme, had finally taken a job as a night security guard at a warehouse, but most of his paychecks still seemed to evaporate before it reached home. They were living, but not thriving, bound together in a stagnant pool of resentment and regret. It was a sad story, but it was no longer ours. We had built a dam, and the toxic waters of her influence could not cross it. When Nia was 5, we decided to use the savings we'd meticulously gathered, no longer earmarked for legal fees or survival, to take a trip, Cassian Stream. We flew to Arizona and stood on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. The sheer, staggering scale of it, the layers of rock telling a billion-year story, made our human dramas feel infinitesimally small. Cassian held Nia on his shoulders, her small hands gripping his hair, and he stared out at the vastness, his eyes shining. "It's ever better than I pictured," he said, his voice thick. I leaned into him, the wind whipping my hair, and felt a profound peace. We had weathered our own canyon, carved by cruelty and conflict, and emerged on the other side to this view. Life moved forward in its gentle rhythm. I was promoted to financial controller at the firm. Miss Price, nearing retirement, had become a mentor and something akin to a surrogate aunt. "You've got a spine of steel, Inara," she told me once over lunch. "I always knew it. I'm just glad you finally got to use it for building something instead of just defending." Cassian's engineering projects grew in scope and prestige. He'd come home sometimes with a particular light in his eyes, talking about sustainable designs and community spaces, his passion no longer dimmed by the weight of familial obligation. His home was his sanctuary, and he poured his creativity into it too, building Nia a magnificent treehouse in the small shared courtyard of our building, a castle in the air where she ruled as queen. The past, however, has a way of knocking. Not with the violent blows of before, but with a softer, more complicated tap. It happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Nia was at a friend's house. Cassian was working late on a deadline. The apartment was quiet except for the patter of rain against the windows. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. A flicker of the old caution made me check the peephole. It was Langston, but he wasn't alone. Beside him, under a large black umbrella held shakily in his hand, stood Valeria. My breath caught. She was almost unrecognizable. The imposing, sharp-faced woman had shrunk. Her clothes hung loose. The fierce, calculating gleam in her eyes was gone, replaced by a watery, uncertain haze. She looked ill, truly ill. Langston's face was etched with deep lines of distress. He gave a small, helpless shrug through the glass. Every instinct screamed to not open the door. The restraining order had lapsed years ago, but the boundaries we'd built were more than legal. They were emotional, vital to our survival. Yet the sight of this broken figure leaning on my gentle father-in-law stirred something else. Not pity, exactly, but a stark human recognition of utter defeat. I unlocked the door and opened it, but didn't step aside to invite them in. I stood in the threshold a sentry for my home. "Langston," I said, my voice level. "Inara," he said, his voice low and urgent. "I'm sorry. I wouldn't have... But she's been diagnosed. Congestive heart failure. The doctor says it's not good." He swallowed hard. "She wanted to come. She's been asking for weeks to see Cassian, to see you." Valeria didn't speak. Her eyes, once so full of malice, traveled past me into the warm, lit hallway, taking in the proof of the life she'd tried to dismantle. They lingered on a recent family photo on the console, Cassian, Nia, and me, laughing on a beach. Her lower lip trembled. "Cassian isn't here," I said, my tone leaving no room for negotiation on that point. "You can't just show up here, Langston. You know that." I know. I know I do." He looked wretched. "But she's leaving the hospital. Hospice is coming to the apartment. This might be her last chance to..." To what? Apologize? Seek absolution? Cause one last scene? The possibilities cycled through my mind, each fraught with danger. The piece we'd carved was so hard-won. Letting her in, even onto the doorstep, felt like risking a crack in our foundation. But then she spoke. Her voice was a thin, raspy shadow of the commanding shriek I remembered. "The child," she whispered, her eyes still fixed on the photo. "The little girl. Nia." Saying the name seemed to cost her effort. A fierce, protective flame ignited in my chest. "You will not see my daughter," I said, each word crisp and final. "Do you understand?" She flinched as if I'd slapped her again. This time, there was no rage in response, only a profound, weary shame. She nodded, a barely perceptible movement. "I understand." She finally dragged her eyes to meet mine. The hatred was gone. What remained was a bleak landscape of regret. "She didn't come for that." She took a shuddering breath. "I came to look at you, to see that you're ill." The absurdity of it threatened to choke me. After everything, she wanted to see if I was all right? The anger rose, hot and familiar, but it met a new wall within me, a wall of certainty. Her opinion, her assessment, her gaze held no power anymore. She was just a sick old woman on my doorstep in the rain. "I am more than all right," I said, and the truth of it rang in my voice. "We are happy. We are a family. We have been for years." I let the statement hang there, a simple, unassailable fact. Tears welled in her eyes, not the performative tears of the courtroom, but real, painful ones. "Cassian," she breathed. "Is he happy?" This was the core of it, not the apartment, not the money, not even her rivalry with me. It was the son she had loved, in her own twisted, possessive way, the son she had driven away trying to own. In that moment, I saw not a monster, but a tragically flawed woman who had confused control for love and had paid the ultimate price, the loss of its object. "He is," I said, and it was the truest thing I could offer her. "He's a wonderful husband and an amazing father. He's at peace." She bowed her head, the umbrella tilting. A sob escaped her, raw and ragged. Langston put a steadying arm around her shoulders, his own eyes damp. The rain filled the silence between us. "You should go," I said, softer now. "You shouldn't be out in this." Valeria looked once more, her eyes searching my face as if memorizing it. "The apartment," she rasped. "It's a good home. I can see that." It was the closest to a blessing, or perhaps an admission of defeat, that she would ever give. "It is," I agreed. "It's our home." Langston nodded at me, a world of gratitude and sorrow in his eyes. "Thank you, Inara." He began to turn Valeria gently, guiding her back towards the stairs. She went without resistance, a shell of her former self. I closed the door, leaning my back against it, my heart pounding not with fear, but with the aftershock of a long-awaited seismic shift. I didn't tell Cassian they came that night. He was tired and excited about his project, and I didn't want to cloud his evening with the ghost of old wars. I waited until the weekend when we were walking with Nia in the park, the same park where I'd seen Valeria on the bench. The spring sun was warm, and Nia was running ahead chasing butterflies. "Your father came by on Tuesday," I began, keeping my voice casual. "With your mother." Cassian stopped walking. The light drained from his face. "What? Why? What did she want? Did she—" I placed a hand on his arm. "She's very sick, Cass. Heart failure. Hospice care." I relayed the encounter, leaving nothing out, her diminished state, her whispered questions, my firm boundaries regarding Nia, her final, tearful acknowledgement. He listened in silence, his jaw tight. When I finished, he looked away, watching Nia tumble in the grass. A long minute passed. "Do you think she was sorry?" he asked, his voice rough. "I think she was full of regret," I said carefully. "I'm not sure a person like her knows how to be truly sorry, but she saw what she lost. She saw our happiness, and I think that was a punishment far worse than any court could have given her." He nodded slowly, absorbing this. "And you? How did you feel seeing her like that?" I considered it, watching a ladybug climb a blade of grass near my foot. "I felt free," I realized out loud.
Before, her presence, even the thought of her, had weight. It was a heavy, dark stone I carried. Seeing her there so broken, I finally put that stone down, for good. She has no power, Cass. Not over me and not over you. She's just a sad chapter that's finally ending.
He pulled me into a tight embrace, his face buried in my hair. "I love you," he murmured. "Thank you for being the strong one, for handling it. I don't know if I could have." "You are strong," I whispered back. "You chose us. That's the strongest thing anyone can do." We decided, together, that he would go see her, not for her sake, but for his own closure. He went the next day to the small, dim apartment Langston described. He was there for less than an hour. When he returned home, he was quiet, pensive. He found me in the kitchen preparing dinner. "It was like you said," he told me, washing his hands at the sink, his back to me. "She's just faded." She tried to talk about the past, to make excuses, but she didn't have the energy to sustain it. Mostly, she just cried. She asked me to forgive her. He turned, leaning against the counter, his expression one of profound sadness. I told her I'd already forgiven her, because carrying the anger was hurting me, not her. But I also told her I would never forget, and that our relationship, the mother and son one, was gone. It died a long time ago. He came over and wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. I told her about Naya. Not details, just that she was smart and funny and kind. She cried harder. Then I left. He held me for a long time. He was mourning, I realized. Not the woman she was now, but the mother he had needed and never had. The idea of family that had always been just out of reach. He was finally laying that ghost to rest. Valeria King died 2 weeks later. Langston called us, his voice steady but tired. The funeral was a small, bleak affair in a nondescript chapel. Cassian, Langston, and I attended. Jiren was there, looking uncomfortable in a cheap suit, shifting from foot to foot. He avoided looking at us. A handful of elderly neighbors and former colleagues of Valeria's filled a few pews. The eulogy, given by a polite pastor who didn't know her, was a generic recitation of a life that sounded nothing like the one she'd lived. We stood at the back. Cassian held my hand tightly. When it was over, we walked out into the weak sunlight. Jiren approached, hesitantly. "Cass?" he mumbled. "Jiren," Cassian acknowledged, his tone neutral. "Look, Jiren scratched his neck, unable to meet his brother's eyes. "I'm staying with a buddy. Got a line on a job in Indianapolis. Gonna try a fresh start." Cassian nodded. "I hope it works out for you." The words were not warm, but they weren't hostile. They were a release. Jiren glanced at me, then quickly away, a flicker of the old shame in his eyes. He gave a jerky nod and shuffled off. And that was that. The last loose thread of that old, painful tapestry was cut. The seasons turned and our lives deepened. Naya started school, bringing home worlds of wonder in the form of scribbled stories and painted galaxies. Langston retired and became a more permanent fixture, the beloved grandfather who taught Naya how to fish and helped her with her math homework. Our family portrait grew, not in number, but in depth and color and joy. One evening, when Naya was about 10, we were all in the living room. Langston was dozing in the armchair. Cassian was on the floor helping Naya build a complex Lego spaceship. I was curled on the sofa reading a book, savoring the quiet symphony of their collaboration, the soft click of plastic bricks, Cassian's low instructions, Naya's excited questions. Naya looked up from her creation, her brow furrowed in a way that reminded me so much of Cassian when he was thinking hard. "Daddy," she asked, "did you have a mommy?" The room didn't go still, but the air changed subtly. Cassian's hands paused for a fraction of a second. Langston's breathing hitched in his sleep. I lowered my book. Cassian looked at his daughter, her innocent face open with curiosity. He had always been honest with her, in age-appropriate ways. "Yes, sweetheart, I did." "What was she like?" He smiled.
a soft, sad, beautiful smile. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's a big question for a little scientist," he said gently. "She was complicated. She loved me in her way, but she had a hard time knowing how to show it. She made some very big mistakes." He glanced at me, and I gave him a small, encouraging nod. "And because of those mistakes, I learned what real love looks like. I learned to choose you, and I learned how to be a dad to you. So, in a way, even the hard parts led me right here, to my best girl and her awesome spaceship." Naya pondered this, her young mind grappling with the abstract concept of a flawed grandmother. "Is she in heaven?" "I hope she found some peace," Cassian said, which was the perfect, honest answer. Satisfied, Naya turned back to her Lego. "Okay, can you pass the red laser blaster?" The moment passed, folding back into the comfortable domestic rhythm, but I caught Cassian's eye over Naya's head. In his gaze, I saw no lingering shadows, no unresolved anguish. There was only love and gratitude and the quiet, steady light of a man who was exactly where he was meant to be. Later that night, after Naya and Langston were asleep, we stood on our small balcony. The city glittered below us, a constellation of other lives, other stories. Cassian slipped his arm around my shoulders. "You know," he said, his voice a soft rumble in the dark, "for years I defined myself by what I came from, the dutiful son, the reliable brother, the guy trying to fix a broken family. Then I defined myself by what I escaped, the man who got away, who broke the cycle." He turned to me, his face illuminated by the amber glow from the living room window. "But now I just define myself by what I have, by who I am with you and Naya, a husband, a father, a happy man." I leaned into him, the solid, warm reality of him. "We built this," I whispered. Not for the first time, but the truth of it never grew old. "No," he corrected me softly, his lips brushing my temple. "You built the foundation, with your strength and your heart. I just had the good sense to help you raise the walls and move in." We looked out at our city, at our life. The slap that had seared my cheek a lifetime ago was now just a faint memory, a scar that had healed strong. The white dress was preserved in a box in the closet, not a symbol of a day ruined, but of a commitment that had been tested in fire and emerged unbreakable. The apartment, my mother's final gift, had fulfilled its promise. It had become a home. The story wasn't about winning a war against a malicious mother-in-law. It was about choosing to build a peace, day by day, brick by brick. It was about understanding that family is not a cage you're born into, but a shelter you construct with careful hands and a willing heart for the people you choose to love. And as I stood there with my husband, the sounds of our sleeping daughter and the man who had become a true father to us both safe inside, I knew with unshakable certainty that our shelter would stand against any storm. It was built on the strongest foundation of all, a love that was tried, tempered, and proven true.